I'm sure you guys remember a couple years ago there was a video game called Active Shooter that was pretty much a school shooting simulator. The only purpose of the game really was to just kill as many kids as you can in a school, hence the name Active Shooter. Obviously, school shootings are a very touchy subject, especially in the United States, and a video game that has you commit a school shooting, a lot of Karens were outraged about that. How can they have a game that makes you commit a school shooting? We demand that Valve pull this game from Steam. And that's what ended up happening. Valve pulled the game from Steam and banned the game's publisher from ever releasing any more games on the platform. I think this was wrong. I don't think any video game should ever be censored no matter how objectionable the content is. It shouldn't be up to Valve, Sony, or Microsoft to decide which games you should be able to play and which games are too offensive. And it's certainly not the government's job either. If you live in a country where your video games are censored, you do not live in a free country at all, because that's some authoritarian shit that goes completely against the idea of free speech. And yeah, maybe there are a few exceptions. Maybe there are certain games that should be banned because they're already illegal to begin with, like if it's a video game that would promote child exploitation or something like that. But that's one of the very, very few exceptions. Even adult-only games that are not allowed on consoles, they should be allowed on consoles. You know, those games that fully simulate sex? Those games should be allowed. And Sony and Microsoft, they shouldn't have the right to tell you you're not allowed to play them. And that even includes games that allow your character to violate women. Now, that doesn't mean that these are games that I would ever want to play, but I also feel the same exact way about games like Manhunt, where you're decapitating people and cutting their heads off with chainsaws and cutting them up. Like, that's just as fucked up in my opinion. And I get really uncomfortable playing games like that, where it's just all about gore and cutting people open and ugh. That kind of stuff makes me really sick. I'm very squeamish, but that's my own decision. Not the game store decision or the government's decision. It's my decision. So no, I don't support video game censorship no matter how objectionable the content is, even when we're talking about delicate subjects like women getting assaulted. Or even a game that would try to fully recreate the 9/11 attacks, like maybe you're a participant in the terrorist attack. My family was personally affected by 9/11, so I definitely wouldn't want to play a game like that, but that's the thing. I don't want to play it, so I don't play it. Why should I make decisions on behalf of other people? The common argument that I hear is that banning these games, it's good for public safety. Like, when Active Shooter got banned, the main justification for it is that if you allowed this game to be played, it's going to teach kids how to be a school shooter. But that makes no sense. If you use that same logic, we should have a lot of 13-year-olds right now committing Grand Theft Auto or robbing banks. Like, that makes no sense. It's a video game. It's not reality. It's a virtual reality. And it's just weird to me how so many people in the video game community actually supported this, actually believed that Active Shooter deserved to be censored, especially on the basis that the game is just too violent, it's too offensive. But the thing is, that's what Karens have been saying about video games for the past 30 years, that the games are too violent, they're too bloody, and they're desensitizing kids to violence. They're gonna become psycho killers if they keep getting exposed to these games. And I just find it weird how that same argument was used for Active Shooter, and most of the gaming community went along with it. The same gaming community that goes up in arms whenever someone tries to ban or censor a video game. Remember Jack Thompson? He's the most famous anti-video game activist that kept lobbying for the government to ban and censor certain games like Grand Theft Auto, Mortal Kombat, Doom. His main argument was that these games desensitize kids to violence and cause shootings. And it's the same bullshit argument that we've been hearing for years, so why did so many people go along with this when the whole Active Shooter thing was going on? It's like they're almost agreeing with the argument that video games cause real-life violence, but that's what we've been arguing against for so many years. So why did so many people in the gaming community go along with this? I have no idea. It makes absolutely no sense. Like, there's no logic behind it. And how about Rape Day? Yeah. Just me saying that word alone guarantees that this video is going to get demonetized, but whatever. I'm opposed to censorship, and that includes self-censorship, which is something that we're seeing way too much of on YouTube. But yeah, Rape Day, remember that game? Valve pulled the game off Steam, PayPal froze funding for the game, so we don't even need government. These corporations do a good enough job at censoring shit for us that we don't even need the government to get involved. How great is that? It's so weird, because I don't remember the same thing happening for the 50 Shades of Grey books and the movies that came out. I don't remember that happening, even though it's pretty much the same shit, let's be real. Yeah, for some reason when you have violent and sexually graphic TV shows and movies, that's more acceptable than a video game that does the same thing. Oh, because it's a video game and you control the character and you're actually performing the action. Like, what? That's like saying actors in a movie are actually killing people. Like, what does that even mean? It makes no sense. And also, can someone explain to me how a rape simulator is so much worse than a murder simulator like Manhunt? Like, how is sexual assault considered so much more extreme and objectionable than slitting people's throats and cutting them in half with a chainsaw? Like, what? There's just no logical argument for games like this to be censored. If you don't want to play it, then don't play it. But nobody has the right to make that decision for everybody. That's especially true when we're talking about the government. They have no right to censor content. And if you do think it's the government's job to regulate free expression, then you don't believe in free expression at all. You're an authoritarian. And even when we're talking about storefronts like Steam, PlayStation, Xbox, they don't have the right to censor games either. You could say, oh, they're a corporation, they have the right to do whatever they want. But they really shouldn't have that right, because corporations have such a huge influence on our daily lives to just allow them to censor content. No matter what the justification may be, it just gives them way too much power over us. And it's definitely a huge threat to freedom of speech. If they don't want these types of games to be featured on their storefront page, like on the front page, then that's one thing. They can curate it and have it filtered, so if you don't want to see it, you don't see it. You kind of have to look for it. That's fine, but to outright censor it, that's not okay.